Welcome to Rooftop Perspectives, inspiring Christ followers to join Jesus in his mission in their everyday lives.
Welcome to Rooftop Perspectives. I'm Michael Brewer, and this is John Whaley. And John, I'm glad to see you again today.
I'm glad to see you this week, and it's going to be, I'm looking forward to this third episode of this series.
This one is special.
It is.
They're all special, but this one, well, they'll know when they see it why. They really will. We're glad you joined us today on Rooftop Perspectives. Our focus each week and our goal each week is to inspire you and to encourage you to join Jesus in his mission in your everyday life. And we do that by sharing the stories of people who are and reports how God's moving across the nations and what he's doing. And today we continue this series of joining Jesus with Life Action. And it's an opportunity to meet some people at the core of all that Life Action does week in and week out. John, tell us about this unique interview today we have.
Well, today is a unique interview. In the first two episodes, you heard us talk about these Life Action teams that travel across the nation 9 months of the year and lead these revival summits across in so many different churches. But those teams are made up primarily of young people, the Gen Z generation in which God is at work today. Most of them age 18, 24, somewhere around there. And they make up three teams known as the blue team, the silver team, and the red team. Well, while in Michigan in August, I sat down with three of these amazing young adults, one from each team. And we talked about revival. We talked about their journey to Christ. We talked about Life Action. And then we talked about how God is moving across their generation. This is a very insightful conversation that I had with these three amazing young adults who are deeply in love with Jesus and so excited about joining him in his mission every day of their lives. And as we are recording this, and even as this is being aired, they're in the very middle of their travel season. And traveling to all of these churches and staying in host homes. And they raise their own support, by the way, to do this. And it's just an amazing, amazing group of young people. And so you will want to take some notes and probably watch this one several times and share it with others, because it is a great, great conversation with these three special people. So enjoy just meeting some of the members of the Life Action team. Well, it's great to be with you guys today. Welcome to Rooftop Perspectives. And for those that are watching, just to let them know, we are in Michigan at Life Action Camp. And it's been already an amazing 2 days, part of Seek Week. And just want to kind of talk to you about your stories and where you're at. And first of all of you introduce yourself and tell us, first of all, a little bit about your Life Action, how you came to Life Action. Then we're going to kind of back up and talk about your whole journey to Christ and revival, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So we're going to do ladies first. So I'm going to start with Leah. So give us your name and tell us about how long you've been with Life Action and how you became a part of this.
Okay, so I'm Leah. This is my third year traveling with the road teams. How I came to be part of Life Action.
Yeah.
Okay, so I gotta think back. So my pastor, my home church pastor, used to travel with Life Action like 30 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So we had Red Team come to our church and do a thirst conference when I was in like the 8th grade. Wasn't old enough to travel. I wasn't really old enough to do crew at the camp either. And then 2 years later, so my sophomore year, I had Silver Team come to my church, and one of the girls like really poured into me, and she really encouraged me to do crew because I wasn't old enough to travel, and I really wanted to travel. So I came up to the camp that summer and I worked crew for 2 weeks and I really liked it, and then I had to go back home. And then junior year was, okay, so junior year, the second half of my junior year was when like everything like shut down, COVID and everything. And this like, me getting to Life Action plays a huge part into my story. So my junior year, after like school was shut down, there was nowhere really to go. Like I really took a step back away from Jesus and church altogether, and I was like, this is not worth it. But then the second half of my senior year, I had Red Team come to my church, and it was, when they came to my church, one of the girls invited me to come when I was working one day. I was like, okay, I'll give this one more shot. So I went to the conference, and I like had forgotten how good Jesus actually was and how worth it actually was. And so I saw my life change that week, for like very big life change, I guess. And I really wanted to be a part of it, and I wanted to be a part of it before then, but Jesus had made the time work out so perfectly where I was in this spot where I had seen how this ministry can affect people who have like taken a step back and actually want revival and want the truth. So like, then I was like, this is what I'm doing. So I like canceled all of like my college plans, all my scholarships to be here. So
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your own journey to Christ. So how did that all happen?
So I was saved. I would say I was saved super young.
Okay.
I don't really remember. I have a hard time remembering like my childhood and growing up. So like I have believed in Jesus my whole life. I've gone to church my entire life. But like my junior year, it was starting to like, I was finally starting to hit like rocky territory in my life of like, okay, what have I been believing my entire life? Is this like the truth? Is it not? So like, I kind of became in that place where Dennis was talking about yesterday of like, what was it? It's like the church where like people will believe in anything.
Yeah. If they don't believe in anything, they'll believe everything.
Yeah. And I was kind of in a place of like, okay, everything could be true, or it could not be true. Is what I have been believing my entire life. I'm also from the South, so like very culturally Christian. Yes. You go to church, you put on your happy face, you go to church, you go Christmas and Easter and a couple of times throughout the year. So like, it's very cultural. Like, it's almost worse to be like, I'm not Christian, like, in that kind of culture, because everyone is.
So what part of the South?
I'm from Alabama.
Okay, very good.
So like in that, it was about like, maybe like 8 months of my life, I was like, okay, so what actually is the truth? And I'd finally gotten to a point where I was so exhausted of trying to find other things, and like other things weren't fulfilling, and this didn't work. Well, because it's contradictory to its own self, and this just doesn't make any sense. So I finally had gotten to a point where Jesus had put me in a place of like, there is nowhere else to turn. And I was like, Jesus, I'll give you one more shot. And I would have said like I was agnostic at that time. And when I met that girl at my work, who I actually got to travel with her too, she was like, why don't you come to the conference? I think like you come hang out with the team. And I was like, okay, like I know your gig. Like I've been in Life Action before, like I've served on crew. And that day, like I was like, okay, Jesus, I'll give you one more shot. And that's all I needed to push me into like actual abundant life with him. So that's kind of my journey.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so again, you're with what team?
I'm with Red Team.
Okay. There's 3 teams. For those that are watching, they may want to know there are 3 teams in Life Action. So, which means that Sophia's on the silver team. I already know you're on the blue team. So I figured that out. So tell me a little about your journey to Life Action, your journey to Christ, and
yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
So my name is Sophia. I live locally to Life Action Camp. I'm South Bend, which is just 15 minutes away from
close
where the camp is. But it was almost too close where we didn't think about it. It's like, oh, that's like, the local camp. But my church, my pastor, he was a revivalist on the silver team for, I think, around 15 years. And so we had a lot of Life Action previous staff members and influence in our church. And so I always had a passion for music. I loved singing, playing piano and guitar growing up, and I was just discovering what artistry was and everything, and just doing it for myself, just really excited about it and passionate. And then once I came to Christ, the way I looked at it shifted. Like, wait, this can be something to surrender, because any gifting I have is only because God has given it. And so I want to steward that well and give it back to him in a way that's ministering and loving people. And so we had on our worship team, a couple of the leaders ahead of me went on to travel with Life Action. One of them was on Blue Team, and I just saw that and I was like, you know what, I feel like God is calling me to ministry, and this is literally in my backyard, this ministry.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was like, what's this all about? And so I worked crew for 4 weeks, going into my senior year of high school. And then I hopped on the road last year, and now I'm here again. So that's kind of how I got there. So yeah. And
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So when did you come to know Christ? Real young?
Yeah. No, it was almost 13.
Okay.
So I grew up in a Christian home where the gospel was presented very well. My mom was very adamant about sharing the Bible with us, and my father too. But I had a lot of chaos in my spirit and in the home. And what was really hard is that the gospel was presented well, but the example in my home, my dad, he actually wasn't saved, but he was living as a Christian, like on the outside. And so I was very angry because I saw this is what God as a father is. And my father says he loves God, but there was a disconnect. And so I had a lot of conflict and chaos in my spirit of like, well, I can't really trust God because I can't really trust Dad, And so there was a lot of bitterness and this tug, but there was also being presented with the word every day. And so his word does not return to him void, And so even though I wasn't saved, I was putting the word in me, or I was having, church or my parents pouring that into me. And it started to work on my heart. And so I got to a place in my life where everything felt broken and fractured, but no one else would have seen it because I kept it all inside. And I only allowed the brokenness to be seen when it was safe to be seen. And so when I got out with people, I put the smile on, I was happy, I was ready to serve for the approval of people.
Yes.
And that's honestly a selfish way to live, right? When you're living for the approval of others, it's for your own glory, because you want to see them appreciate you, not God. And so God's word started working in my heart, and he started to use that to transform me, to see that this is broken in your life. This relationship might be broken or scary. You might feel like chaos, but I am your peace, and I am Lord, and he's the only one that deserves glory and honor and praise. And so I was brought to a place of surrendering. I think of Isaiah 6 when Isaiah has a vision about being in a temple with a seraphim and seeing the presence of God and the holiness. And woe is me, for I am a man of unclean lips, right? And he came and saw the holiness of God and knew, I can't be here. And then God cleansed him. And then he said, here I am, and then God sent him out. So, yes, I'm broken, but I'm cleansed, so I can surrender to God, and he can send me out to love vulnerably.
It's so good.
Yeah, because then I got to see that redemption, because through the years, then as God was restoring my heart, he eventually restored my dad's heart.
Oh, cool.
And so my dad came to Christ when I was, I think the summer before I went on the road. or the year before. And so I got to see that transformation in his own life, because all those years that God didn't forget my dad, you know, in his brokenness too. And so I think that's what's beautiful about being part of Life Action is my own story. I've seen the broken, fractured family that looks perfect on the outside, but once you get in, it's just a mess. And God sees that, and he still loves us and knows us. And so here I am, and it's like I've seen him transform, and I'm still in that sanctification, but it's like I'm broken, but here I am, send me, you know.
I love that. It's quite a great story. Great story. And to hear the story of your dad's transformation through all of that. So good. Yeah. Now we come to Cameron, who really has two answers when you ask him how long you've been in Life Action. So you have kind of a double answer. So tell us a bit about your Life Action journey, which started when you were very young. And through all of that, how you came to know Christ. And
my journey started when I was 5 years old, actually. I was adopted from Ethiopia.
Okay.
And my parents who adopted me were part of the ministry. My dad was actually the camp director here.
Okay.
And my mom worked with him. And so they adopted me, and I came and kind of was introduced into this lifestyle when I was 5. So, but I think one of the things I remember getting here was, it was just, first of all, it was a lot different than where I was from, obviously.
Obviously.
But it really was some of the best years of my life, because really I had all this property to run around in, and I had all my friends, a lot of my friends were the staff kids and the other family staff kids, and so it really was just a great few years. Yeah. And then when I was 8, my parents decided to leave this section of the ministry and move to the traveling teams as team pastor and one of the family teachers on the team. And so what that required was me and my whole family, I have 3 brothers, all left and packed everything we had into a trailer, and we started traveling around the country with essentially what we are today. But when I was 8, it was different. They were all older than me. And so that was, it sounds cool, but when I was 8, that was really hard, because I was leaving a lot of things for 9 months. And I remember my first year, it was pretty tough. We did it, and we came back, and I was super excited to, see my friends again. And we got back, and I found out like 4 or 5 of the families that we were really close to all had moved from the ministry on to different things in their lives. And so, just being an 8-year-old, I was like, man, my life is just terrible right now. It wasn't, but that was my perspective. And so that was when I was 8, and we continued doing that year after year. We'd come back in the summer, year after year, we'd go on the road. And during this time, I was pretty active in the this part of the story is how I came to know Christ, because this is, I think, really important. But I began to help out in the different parts of our road team ministries. So I was helping teach kids. I was pretty young. I was like 9, 10, 11, 12, helping, doing all these things, and all the way till I was 14 years old. And I remember when my freshman year, that summer before, I was an extremely rebellious kid. Everything you'd imagine a rebellious kid I was. Constantly going beyond my boundaries that my parents had set for me, in constant disobedience. And it all boiled down to, we got back on the road in September, and we were at this church, and Steve, who's our team revivalist at that point, was teaching a sermon on knowing, doing, and being. That was kind of his session, like how as people we live in 3 different places. We know the word, we do the word, or we are followers of Jesus, knowing, doing, and being. And I realized I knew everything. I knew everything we were teaching in our ministry, which is essentially the gospel. I was doing it by teaching kids and helping in active ministry, but I was not a follower of Jesus. And I had not confessed my own sin and repented. And so I remember just being overwhelmed with that one night, and talked to my parents and I met Christ that night, some random church parking lot in Arkansas. It's just the nature of traveling. It's just we're always in some other random parking lot or a house. But yeah, that was when I was 14, and the next 4 years of my life, which were my high school years, we were still on the road, and those were growing years. But I went down some difficult paths. I was a follower of Jesus, but I wasn't always living it out. And then COVID came when I was a senior in high school. Junior in high school. COVID came, and COVID did a lot for people, but COVID changed my life in a lot of different ways. The first way it forced me to take a step back from all that I thought I was. I'm very extroverted. I was very extroverted at that point in my life, like 90%. Like people was where I got all my energy, where I got my satisfaction, everything. And so all of a sudden I didn't have people for 4 months.
Exactly.
As we were just here at the camp, nobody was here, no families were here. It was just me, my family, and I think actually one other family. And the Lord began a work in my life, the real fruit work in my life, by pruning away the things that didn't need to be there and teaching me how to abide in Him. So I went from like 90% extroverted to I think I'm like a 40 or 50 now. Was just remembering that the mission and the call that Christ has me, it is to minister to people, but it's to abide in Him and not find all my energy and passion and love and desire in those people. And it's okay to get a little bit of that, but not all of it. And so that's kind of my salvation story. And then through that, I was able to get a position on the team. And so I went from a staff kid to a team member after high school. And so I was independent from my family. As far as being on the road, I was now a team member, so I was in the host homes, and I was raising my own funds, and I was had a specific job. I was on the band for 2 years, and the Lord again is continuing to do that work in my life. I mean, I could go because I feel like every year there's something else God did or God is doing even now. But yeah, so and now I'm here teaching. I'm a student revivalist, so I teach the students.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got lifetime with Life Action, basically.
Just try to cover 15 years. It's hard. It's
yeah, it is. It is. Of course, the whole heartbeat of Life Action, which I've always loved, is, as it says on the website, sparking revival in the life of churches. That whole thing of inspiring people to their next yes, their next yes to God. And of course, revival is one of those loaded terms in a church culture, especially in the South. I pastored in Alabama and grew up in the South, and you can sit 25 people in a room anytime and say, tell me what revival is, and you'll probably get 30 different answers out of 25 people. So let's just talk about revival. You know, what is it, and have a conversation about what is your heart desire as you're going to churches of what you want to see happen in the life of the church. So what is revival? As y'all think about revival, any of you can answer. This is a conversation. So what do you think about when you hear revival?
That's a good question. It's probably just eye-opening for me, sometimes sad, because I don't always think of what it truly means for me, but honestly, I just look at the work that God has done in my life, what I just talked about. I think it's just transformational power, abiding in either a soul, one soul, or corporate group of people, and that transforming power, moving people into mission.
That's good.
Whether it doesn't matter if it's a vocational mission, if it's something that you're going to do, or if it's just, all right, I'm going to extend God's love in every situation I'm in. It's God's presence changing people to look more like Him. That's just kind of.
I like that. The whole concept there of God's presence changing people. I think that's a great. So when y'all think about revival, other insights there.
I mean, it is like a loaded term, and like in the South, it is used really loosely.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you ask people in the South what revival, well, that's that 4-day meeting we have
Yeah,
every
we have
spring
one
and every
last
fall.
week. Yeah. So, I don't like. That's something I've kind of asked myself since I've been here. Like, what does revival actually look like? Is it widespread or is it personal? So I don't know. Like, revival is mission. Like, revival is action and movement.
Yeah.
I mean,
And that's so critical, that whole understanding that revival is mission. You know, because one of the things we're talking about so much this week, and Dennis is talking about during Seek Week, is the whole fact that revival always leads to mission. That if revival doesn't lead you to mission, then you really haven't had revival.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole purpose of revival, is it's realigning your heart with God's heart, that transformation. Any thoughts on that?
It's so funny. I was actually thinking of the word realignment as well.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. In this world, we have so many trials and sufferings. And I was talking to one of my pastors one time, and just kind of sharing my struggles and our circumstances. When we're looking at them horizontally, just around us, they seem so daunting and so big, and we take our eyes off of God. And so he becomes, in our eyes, very, very small and far away. Like, are you even in this, God? And these seem massive and life-altering. But it's him realigning our focus to be like, who is God? And being in awe of him. And that, like Cameron was saying, like that propelling us to change. Like, you know, the yes changes everything. Like, concept of surrendering our obedience, like, the revival, when it comes in, it changes and transforms. Like, it changes the way we're going to live our life. So we're not going to continue living circumstantially, but we're going to live with eternity in mind of seeking first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, you know, and all these things will be added to you. Like, it's living with, you know, a kingdom mindset of like knowing who God is and letting that change the way we advance in our life.
That's good. And so as y'all are heading, I know you're about to head into another season of travel here just shortly. So as you're going into churches, what are some of the things that you're thinking about or praying into about, here's what we would like to see happen in the life of a church? So what are some of the things that you just really are looking and just really hoping this happens?
do you mean that more in like a corporate?
In a corporate sense. Because they think about revival, when you said about individual and corporate, and people always ask, is revival individual or corporate? I say yes.
Yeah.
Because it is. And I know as you go into churches, you know, there's just this hope and desire. You know, what are some of the things you're just praying that this will happen while we're there?
I kind of like, I always pray for the people who were in my spot when I attended an event, and like people who are like seeking the truth and they're giving it another shot. Like, I always pray for people who are looking for that, like more personal revival. And that's harder to see. Obviously, we won't always hear about that, or like those people won't always join the team. Like, so that's something that I tend to really pray for, the people who are curious and just seeking what life with Jesus is like, rather than like, I turned my whole life around, more of like the people who have the questions and like wandering in, like those are the people that my heart is for when we go out to churches.
That's good. People come to understand it's relationship, not religion, and really understand who Jesus is. Because we realize as we go into churches, you know, you have a significant number of people who come who think they're Christians, but they haven't yet surrendered to Christ. They've never said yes. They've gone through all the external, and you got a lot of those people seeking and trying to figure out, is this thing really real? I mean, is this Jesus, can he really change my life? And a lot of people, you we forget how many people are sitting in our churches every Sunday who have walked an aisle, they've prayed a prayer, they've been baptized, but I mean, they've never, we're hoping that during that week they connect and realize, oh, this is what it means to follow Jesus. What's some of the things you're thinking about praying for as you go into churches, Sophia?
Yeah, I think that an aspect of it that God's kind of impressed on my heart is the families. The families that come in that feel like they have to have it all together and, show up on Sunday morning and the exterior looks really good.
Yeah.
And we're ready to be at church, we serve, but then it's just fractured. And I guess my heart would be them being led to a place where they can be honest, coming to God and allowing God into transforming the family unit of what that looks like for families to be unified. Because there's so many families that are together, but there's so much disunity. And so allowing God to shape and renew the kids and the parents and that relationship, and because the ministry of children is such a beautiful thing, because that's the next generation. And how are we stewarding the opportunity of the kids in our home, as for the parents, that's an opportunity to disciple. And so just seeing that be renewed, so that then when those kids are growing up, then they're sent out, so just seeing the transformation of families for me.
And when you look over the 52-year history of Life Action, man, there are so many stories of families. I mean, marriages being restored and families being restored, and people come and understand that God invites us to come to Him in our mess, and so He can do that work in us, and that's powerful. So Cameron, what are some of the things that's kind of some of your passions as you're going into churches and you're thinking, God, would you do this?
Yeah, I mean, mine goes along the same vein as Lee's when she said her heart goes out to the people living in similar lives as her. And I think in my own life, especially I teach the students, and so my main focus is when I get into a church is helping shepherd and disciple students in the amount of time I get, whether it's 4 or 11 days. It can be hard to do that, but I do my best to try to pour into them truth from the Word. And so I think of my life between 14 and 18, what those things were filled with, which were a lot of lies, both lies that I would say and both lies that I was believing. And then I think of a wrong sense of my identity, placing, again, I talked earlier about placing all my passions and desires and joy, I guess, happiness in people rather than Christ. And so my heart goes out to students, young people who are living lives where they don't truly understand who Christ has made them to be. And I pray that the Lord just completely restores their lives, that they don't seek to be comfortable, they don't seek to be just living lives where everything just works for them. They're happy. I hear the phrase I just want to be happy, and it's that's not the goal of the following Jesus, not to be happy. The joy comes in following Him wherever He calls you to. And so the thing that I seek for most and I pray for is just restored views of Jesus. Because the reality is, a lot of the churches we go into, people already have some sort of concept of what they think Jesus is. But most of the time it's the wrong concept.
It's not biblical at all. It's good.
And so to restore that view of Jesus, which I just think of myself, of when during those times in COVID, when I was just by myself reading the Gospel of John, I was just in there the whole time and just reading the words of Jesus. And I think it's I don't remember where it is, but I think of Jesus when He was praying the high priestly prayer. And He's praying for the people that He'd been ministering to for 3 years. He's about to die. He's crying out to His Father 33 years, and I just have that same passion and desire for the people that I get to minister to, praying for them, crying out for them on behalf. That's really my desire, is to see restored relationships with Jesus.
That's good. That's good. Well, kind of wrap up with this question, since Asbury, this has been an amazing year since Asbury. As we're watching God just move across your generation. There's so many things that have happened on dozens of college campuses. And there's many of us that have been following revival and awakening for decades and praying for awakening. And many of us sense that your generation is the new wine and the new wineskin that's going to bring in a revival and maybe the next great spiritual awakening. Just, what do you sense is God's doing in these days, especially among your generation, as we look at what God's doing across student ministries, campuses? What are some of what do you sense God's doing?
I don't know. It is it's so big.
Oh, it
It's
is.
so much bigger than I could ever imagine. But I personally think God is really using what we've grown up in to almost we're the first generation to grow up with social media and
Yes.
technology at our fingertips. So we've been fed all these lies our entire life of how we're supposed to be, how we are supposed to show up and have it together and everything. So I think growing up seeing all of that almost pushes us further into truth seeking. And is those lies even worth pursuing? What is me and my mom talk all the time about how our generation is a truth seeking generation.
It is. Yeah.
And we'll do anything to find it.
And God's using that, I think, to spur. That's what's happening on a lot of these campuses. Is that we want to know truth. Other thoughts about that?
Yeah. Kind of going off of what Leah said, I think there's a hunger because, like you were saying, the happiness, the whole concept of we're living for our own enjoyment or happiness or find the next thing. It's it's hard when you seek happiness in everything and find it in nothing, or you find it for very short times and then it leaves you feeling empty and just gross. And so I think there's a frustration of dissatisfaction, or however you say that word.
Dissatisfaction.
Dissatisfaction. But things
I like
aren't.
your word better. Yeah.
Thank you. I came up with it on the spot. So, but there's a hunger for more, and like you were saying, truth seeking. What is going to satisfy? And are we living for our own happiness, or are we living for something more?
Yeah.
And so
That's good.
it comes down to what we're living for, and getting a taste of that, and then God's using that. So.
That's good. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, I just echo what they say, especially Leah when she's talking about finding truth. It's just we live among people who are trying to find what's true, and that's why you get a lot of students and a lot of high school students and college students believing a mixture of 10 different religions, and I believe a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this. It's just they want to have some type of structure of truth, and so to be able to be people who are stepping the buses and driving around with what we believe is the truth, what we know is the truth, and that is the love of Jesus, and to present that to people. Obviously, there's nothing that in our power that we can do to change lives, but we present that truth, and we just pray our hearts out that they receive that same truth, and I believe and I know that God is going to bring along people who are going to see that truth and to abide in it and to live their lives for it.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you taking time today just to have this conversation. and I know it'll encourage others who watch it. And we're excited to see what God's doing at Life Action, and especially right now as Life Action and the Rooftop beginning to work together and learn ways that we can begin to serve together on the road and different things. It's going to be an exciting next couple of years especially. And just thank you for the time today, guys. And I know you've got a busy afternoon, and hopefully I'm planning on being back with you tonight, and we're going to have a great time together. So thank you for your time. God bless.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Michael, I love spending time with this age group. This is one reason I purposely choose to disciple people from this age group. You know, and it's just refreshing. Their vitality, their love for Jesus, and man, and they gave us so many great truths that we could share multiple takeaways from this conversation. But one of the things they talked about is one of them said, when we live for the approval of others, we are living for our own glory, not God's.
Yep.
And coming from that generation, this age group, that's a huge statement for them to make.
Yes.
Because, you know, because of social media and everything, you know, this age group constantly is really battling with identity. And they look for the identity so many times from other people and their approval. But to hear them say, you know, when we begin living for other people's approval, we're not living for God's glory, we're living for our glory. And to have that depth of maturity to understand that living for other people's approval is a waste of time. We're already fully accepted by God. God loves us. So we want to live for him. We want to live for his glory every day and know that when we do that, God will take care of everything else. Yeah. And that's something that we adults need to be reminded of, because we're just as guilty as anyone of seeking other people's approval.
And it's happening down into our middle school children.
Oh yes,
these are the older generation.
Yes.
Of Gen Z. And how many stories have we heard, read about, seen in the news, or hear people talk about because they did not receive the approval or they were bullied? We have a generation that's in crisis of being despondent, despaired, depression, and a much higher possibility of committing suicide if they don't receive affirmation from their peer groups. And if they don't receive it specifically on social media. So this is a profound reality that needs to be spoken into this generation.
Yeah.
That's the reason true revival is so important, and getting them to share their take on what revival was. And we came away with the revival is transformation power, moving people into mission. It's not just this wonderful touchy-feely, oh, I'm right with God, but it's this moving within the individual that I'm now part of God, and he's going to reach my friends, my family, my community through me, with me, by me. The transforming power of God that moves people into mission. And the mission is Jesus's mission.
Exactly.
Walking with him, living with him, letting him lead us and guide us, so that God the Father, speaking through God the Son, leading us by God the Spirit, the triune God gets to take us into the world to be the light and the salt and everything God promises us we can be. That's what revival does. It transforms us.
Yeah, and they get it, that it always leads to mission.
Yeah.
And this goes right back to this new Say Yes Summit that we're developing with Life Action. You're saying yes to Jesus is saying yes to mission, and understanding that revival is always transformational. I like what you said, Michael. It's not a feel good, because many people in the church today, they think revival is a 4-day meeting with great preaching and great music, and we all walk away feeling woohoo. And the reality is, real revival leads to brokenness, repentance, confession. Real revival changes you from the inside out and makes you a new person. And so it's not just a 4-day good meeting. And then toward the end of the conversation, we talked about how God is moving in the Gen Z generation. And I love what one of them said when she said, God is using what we are growing up in. She says, we're the first generation to grow up with social media technology. And I love that phrase, social media technology. And she said, we've been fed all of these lies. And one of those is, if you want to be happy, find other people's approval. We've been fed all of these lies, which has driven us to seek truth. And several times they talked about, we'll do anything to find truth. This is a truth-seeking generation, which I believe explains why God is moving so powerfully in this generation.
Yes.
And why God did what he did at Asbury, why God is doing what he's doing in literally dozens of campuses right now across the nation, not just college, but high school, even down the middle school campuses, because we are in a generation that says we want truth, and Jesus is the truth. And because they're open and they are seeking, God is revealing himself to them in some amazing ways. And it's exciting to realize that this is we're talking 60 to 70 young people that travel with Life Action. And many of them, before they can even travel, when they're in high school, they're serving in Life Action camp as a crew member. And to realize, when you get despondent, understand that these 60 or 70 just represent thousands more like them across the nation of students who are just seeking truth. They're seeking God, and God is meeting them on their campuses, meeting them in their churches. Man, I don't know about you, Michael, but these are exciting days to be a part of.
When one of the statements, and I can't remember which one made, because I have 16 takeaways on my piece of paper from this video, and we narrowed it down to 3. We married some of them together, and that helped. But they said, we're no longer living in the moment, but living in the scope of eternity.
Oh, wow.
No longer living in the moment. And this is a generation that's always been about the moment.
Always.
And to hear them say that, I mean, my hair's standing up on my arm now, just remembering the context of all they were saying.
Yeah.
But no longer living in the moment, but living in the scope of eternity. I mean, that's the big picture.
Yeah.
That a lot of my generation has forgotten. Because somewhere along getting older, you start living in the moment again.
Amen. And you forget the backdrop is eternity.
It's so much more, so much more.
Wow. And this is one reason I want to encourage those of you that may be listening or watching that are part of mine and Michael's generation, the older generation. This is also a generation that is looking for the wisdom and mentorship of an older generation. And I have several that I disciple right now. And one of them came to me several years ago and said, would you disciple me? I mean, they enjoy hanging out with our age because they want to learn from us. But the thing I understand and learn every time I meet with this generation, man, I learn so much from them. And I'm reminded so much of truth like what you just shared about we live in light of eternity. We don't live for the moment. And we need to be reminded of those truths. So we want to encourage you, if you want to know more about Life Action, just go to lifeaction.org. I encourage you, if you're watching this, you're a pastor and you've never had a Life Action team come to your church, you need to book a team. They come in and they do everything, Michael. I mean, they come in, they lead the worship, they work with the children, they work with the students. They do everything, because the reason they do that is so the church can actually be involved and enjoy and be a part of the revival movement that's taking place. I encourage you today, if you were inspired by what you heard and what you saw and listened to, please like it on YouTube and Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Rooftop TV, and that way you'll get notifications. If you hit that notification bell on the YouTube channel, you'll get notifications of episodes as they come out. Please also follow us, and that way you can also continue getting notifications. And then let others know about this podcast by sharing the episodes with your family and friends on social media. And then if you are listening to us on any of the other platforms like Spotify or Castbox, please leave a review and let people know how this episode or these episodes have blessed you. And so we thank you for joining us today. If you want to know more about the rooftop.org is our website, and you can go to the rooftop.org and learn more about the Rooftop Ministry, a global ministry making 1 million disciples in 100 countries by the end of 2026. And you can also discover how to become a part of this vision that God has given us. And then next year, we'll be in Dallas, Texas for the Rooftop Discipleship Summit. Hard to say that fast, Michael. But this will be a 2-day summit focusing on what does it look like to make disciples outside the walls of our church buildings and comfort zones. It's going to be an incredible 2 days. This will be our third of our 5 summits that we are doing over the next 2 years around the globe. Well, thank you for taking time to join us today. I hope you have an incredible week joining Jesus